If you are a Nebraska fan, it has to be pretty difficult watching this Nebraska team play over the last decade. A majority of us can stay positive about our teams despite how bad they are, but the situation in Lincoln, Nebraska hasn't been all that great over the last decade. This was a Nebraska team that was consistently a good team, and they had multiple 9+ win seasons in the 2000s and the early 2010s. And before the 2000s, they were winning national championships because they went back-to-back in 1970 and 1971, but they also went back-to-back in 1994 and 1995. And then they went on to win their fifth in 1997. And I mean, even since the 2000s, Nebraska was a very good team, even if they were not winning national championships. But this Nebraska team slowly started going downhill in the mid-2010s after Bo Pelini stepped away from the job. Mike Riley and Scott Frost could not get the job done for this Nebraska team, and the last winning season for Nebraska was in 2016 when Nebraska went 9-4. And since then, we have seen the same result just about every season from Nebraska football. They win 4 or 5 games, and they are very competitive in a majority of their games, but they can never finish the games out, and they lose multiple one-possession games every single season, and it's almost like a curse up to this point. The downhill trend started in 2017 when they went 4-8. Since 2017, they have lost a total of 52 games. 33 of those 52 games were one-possession games. You guys remember that season where Nebraska went 3-9 in 2021, and all 9 of their losses were by 9 points or less. It didn't matter how good Nebraska was or how good the team they were playing was, because a lot of the time Nebraska would be pretty competitive in the game, but they would always end up losing the game, and a lot of the time it was in pretty embarrassing fashion. I mean, even in 2023, it really looked like there was a direct path for this Nebraska team to make their first bowl game since 2016. They started off the season 5-3 despite playing the whole season without a quarterback that could throw more touchdowns than interceptions. But last season, the Nebraska curse continued to live on as Nebraska would lose their last 4 games of the season by 7 points or less, and they would just miss out on a bowl game yet again. Scott Frost could not get the job done from 2018 to 2022 as the head coach, but can Matt Rhule be that guy that finally gets Nebraska football out of that slump? Matt Rhule led them to a 5-7 record in 2023, which was his first season coaching at Nebraska, but there's not that many coaches in college football with a track record like Matt Rhule. The coaching staff is solid, and they have a 5-star true freshman quarterback in Rhule. I really think Nebraska is so close to breaking through and getting back to relevance. We don't know what's going to happen, but today I wanted to give my honest thoughts about why I think this Nebraska football program has a lot of potential heading forward. But as always, let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing. And also consider joining my Discord server down in the description below. But without further ado, let's get back into the video. Matt Rhule started his head coaching career back in 2013. In year 1 at Temple, he led them to a 2-10 record. In year 2, he led them to a 6-6 record. But in year 3 and year 4, he led Temple to double-digit win seasons, including winning the American Conference in his final season at Temple, which was his 4th season at Temple in 2016. He would then get offered a better job, and he became the head coach for Baylor in 2017 in the Big 12. And again, it was a terrible first year as he only led Baylor to a 1-11 record, but in year 2 he led them to a 7-6 record, and in year 3 he led Baylor to an 11-3 record and a Big 12 championship game appearance. Year 2 and year 3 has always been a big jump for Matt Rhule. And if the pattern continues, then this Nebraska team has a chance to win 8 or 9 games next season. And maybe they even compete near the top of the Big Ten Conference in a couple of years if Matt Rhule stays at Nebraska. Matt Rhule is off to a head start as Nebraska went 5-7, which is much better than 1-11 or 2-10 in his previous year 1 head coaching jobs. Matt Rhule has made it clear that he is all into this Nebraska football program, and I personally do not see Matt Rhule leaving anytime soon. He's got the tools necessary at Nebraska. He has stated that he loves the people that he works with, and he loves the passion from all of the fans, and he loves Lincoln, Nebraska. And Nebraska has a big positive with not only returning Matt Rhule, but they will also be returning Tony White, who led a great defense last season. Tony White is the highest paid assistant coach in Nebraska history. He got a pay raise to $1.6 million. He did a great job with this Nebraska defense last season, and they were 8th in the country for yards per play given up at 4.62. This Nebraska team returns one of the top defensive coordinators in the Big Ten, and Tony White is probably a future head coach. But keeping Tony White as your defensive coordinator is huge, and this Nebraska defensive coaching staff is underrated. And this Nebraska defense also returns 78% of production on defense, which is top 10 in the country. The defense should definitely be in good hands, and if the defense takes another step up, then all I gotta say is have fun scoring points on this Nebraska team. But the big thing that held Nebraska back last season was the offense, more specifically the passing attack, because when your quarterbacks are throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, you know you have a problem, and when you don't even have a quarterback that can pass for 1,000 yards, you know you got a big problem. 2023 Nebraska football had to have one of the ugliest situations at quarterback I have ever seen. Jeff Sims started the season and he was terrible, throwing for 1 touchdown and 6 interceptions in 5 games. Chubba Purdy was alright, but he wasn't necessarily what you wanted out of a quarterback, and he transferred to Nevada anyways. And at least Heinrich Haarberg actually threw 7 touchdown passes, and he was also the leading rusher on the team, but he had a terrible completion percentage of 49. None of the quarterbacks were really ideally what you wanted. But Nebraska did have a very good rushing attack, rushing for 176 yards a game, which was second in the Big Ten Conference. And they did that despite not having a running back who ran for 500 yards or more. They still had a great rushing attack, and they actually had 7 guys with 130 or more rushing yards. I guess that's what's going to happen when you have no passing attack. But in general, this offense was really all over the place and it held them back. But they do have a decent rushing attack going forward. They returned Gabe Ervin Jr. and Ramir Johnson, and they both suffered season-ending injuries against Northern Illinois last season. And I'm not joking, this Nebraska football program is legitimately cursed, and they struggled with injuries last season for many different players. But I still believe in this Nebraska football team. They bring in 4-star running back Dante Dowell out of the transfer portal, who really adds to that rushing attack. They have many solid running backs on the roster. But as we all speculate, the X factor for this offense as a whole has to be 5-star true freshman quarterback Dylan Rhule. He was the 3rd best quarterback in the class of 2024. He's got a great arm talent, and if he could throw more touchdowns than interceptions, then that alone could be an upgrade for this Nebraska football team. Matt Rhule won't be asking much for Dylan Rhule in year 1. Dylan Rhule probably just has to be consistent and make the right plays, and I don't think Nebraska needs much out of Dylan Rhule to finally become bowl eligible again. But if Dylan Rhule completely overexceeds expectations, are we looking at a Nebraska team that is an 8 or 9 win team or even a 10-win team? This Nebraska team has many pieces necessary to win games. Dylan Rhule will have a decent team around him, and I trust this coaching staff to help develop Dylan Rhule. The offensive line will have to protect the quarterback better. Last season, the offensive line gave up 30 sacks, which was 4th most in the Big Ten, but they returned 4 starting offensive linemen from last season. And they have new offensive lineman additions that could potentially make an impact. Grant Briggs is a 4-star offensive lineman in the class of 2024, and he was one of the top offensive linemen in the country. They also brought in 3-star offensive lineman Micah Mazuka from Florida as a transfer, and he should be a starter on this Nebraska offensive line. I think they do have some decent pieces on the offensive line, and we will see how everything plays out on the offensive line, but I think Nebraska has a lot of positives heading forward. Matt Rhule's done pretty decent in the recruiting trail. He hasn't been dominant, but he had the 30th best class in the nation in 2023, and now he has a top 25 class in 2024 that is led by 5-star quarterback Dylan Rhule. I don't think Nebraska needs to be a super talented team to compete with the best teams in the Big Ten. I truly believe that this is a well-coached football team, and their style of play is going to give teams a difficult time no matter who they are playing. It's hard to look ahead to the future and predict any success for this Nebraska team if you just look at what happened since 2017, but I believe Matt Rhule can help Nebraska football get over the curse, and when I look at the bigger picture, I see a team with a lot of positives heading forward. They have a very solid defense that could potentially get better in 2024. They have a very solid rushing attack, and now they bring in Dante Dowell to add to the mix. The offensive line has its fair share of concerns, but it wasn't horrible last season, and they add some new pieces. And they also have a 5-star quarterback in Dylan Rhule, who I assume will be a day 1 starter. Nobody is expecting this team to win the Big Ten in 2024, but I think that we can realistically look at this team as a team with the 8 or 9 win ceiling in 2024. And then after next season, we should really learn more about the direction this team is heading. And I know I haven't really talked about the receiving core. They really didn't have any standout receivers last season, but they brought in 2 solid receivers out of the transfer portal. They brought in leading receiver from Wake Forest, Jamal Banks, and Isaiah Neyor from Texas, who has a lot of potential. I'm not so sure about this Nebraska receiving room, to be honest, but they do have some guys. And they bring back Jalen Lloyd, who had 237 yards with only 6 catches last season. They also return Alex Bullock and Malachi Coleman. But keep an eye on Isaiah Garcia because he will be back after tearing his ACL last season. I think this passing attack has potential to be elevated with Dylan Rhule in 2024. And if this team can stay healthy, they can make some noise in the Big Ten because the schedule is not all that difficult. They play Ohio State, but outside of that game, I'd say every game on the schedule they have a legitimate chance to win. We will see how high I am on this team when I predict their schedule, but I definitely believe that Nebraska is at least getting over the bowl drought in 2024. And honestly, I believe they are a big sleeper team heading into next season. I'm excited to watch Dylan Raiola next season, and I'll definitely have to watch Nebraska's spring game to learn even more about Dylan Raiola. But Dylan Raiola is probably the most important true freshman player heading into next season. And that game against Colorado early in the season should help determine a lot more about this Nebraska football team. Because Nebraska completely crumbled and basically played Colorado without a quarterback last season, and they lost the game by 22 points. But heading into next season, Nebraska is third in the country for return in production, and they returned 77% of production, so I definitely expect a step up from Nebraska in 2024. And I'm not a Nebraska fan, but I'm very excited to watch this team next season, and I believe they are a very interesting team. And I believe in this Nebraska team, and I would honestly love to see them get over that bowl drought. But anyways, that is going to do it for today's video. You guys let me know your thoughts about Nebraska football down in the comments below. But let me remind you guys to like the video, and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel, because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing, and also consider joining my Discord server down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.